Right, so need a bigger brush. Let's find a bigger brush. This is my test swatch, and I think I've got here a dark green that was made from, it would be probably indigo or blue-grey deep. That would give me a very dark blue. So let's go with that and see. Do forgive my chest. Okay, so a freehand. I'm not trying to keep anything straight or... It just takes a little bit of concentration. And I want this really thick, this paint. And this is the beauty. You can't do this with... I don't think you can do this very easily with the traditional watercolours. Maybe, maybe some of the Daniel Smith ones work to give you a really dark background. But I don't think, just tidying up the edge a little bit, I should try not to smudge it, and we'll let it dry. Okay, that doesn't look too bad. I'll put that over there and let that dry. And maybe I'll do a green one as well. So, darkest green on here is Sap Forest Gump, that one there. This one here, just give that a little bit of activation in case you can't see it. It's this one here. And I will take another one of my cards. Just test it first. Yeah, that'll do. Okay, so that's Forest Gump. So we'll just draw another background. It's probably best to do this with a reasonably big brush. This is a 14, I think, yeah. I love these beautiful, dark, rich colours. Something which, before I came across these Japanese colours, I had no idea you could get such rich colours with watercolour, and it's been really quite an eye-opener for me, because I always used to paint sort of diluted, a bit, you know, your David Bellamy and your Ron Ranson kind of washed out sort of paintings. But I remember once when I went on a course with Ron Ranson, when he was still alive, I remember he had just discovered, I think it was David, what's his name? David Cox, I think. Let's say it was David Cox anyway, he's an Australian artist. And he had suddenly discovered that you could paint watercolours in really strong shades of, you know, very deep tones. And he was quite what's the word? Set back on his heels, I think, because he'd realised that if you live in a country other than England, you couldn't just paint. You can't just paint milky colours if you live in Australia or even most parts of America or Canada. You need more colour. So let's see if this blue one's dry yet. No, so it's time to get the hairdryer out. Or if you've got a heat gun, which I haven't, you could use that. So I'm going to do this. So it's up to you now what you are going to paint on here, isn't it? And yes, I'm still trying to make up my mind. Do I want to do something? I was practicing this morning. Here's some of these paints that I've used. It says here, draw different phases of the moon. You may like to start with a black background or perhaps on black coloured paper. Well, I've painted it navy blue and use white paint or white cut paper to create shapes. Well, I started off by doing moons, but then I thought, so we've got some shiny leaves and things like that here. So we could do that on this card, or we could, it sort of looks a bit like it's asking for a nativity scene, doesn't it? You know, with a manger and a star and everything. So we could do that. Maybe we'll do that. Perhaps I'll just do that to start with. So what colour shall we use on this dark blue? Oh, it's hard to say, isn't it, really? I have no idea. And another thing you could do too, if you don't feel very confident about going straight in, you could put your drawing in first with pencil, because it will show up on the black. So we could do that, and so we could put a star, and we could put a line for the mountains in the distance, for example, and we could put then just a very simple, you know, you see this all over Pinterest, a stable like this, and then inside the manger, like that, with or without Mary and Joseph. Okay, let's see how that goes. I don't know if this is going to work or not. Let's go for a light colour for the star. Maybe a sort of bronzy colour for the hills in the background. I don't know. Well, it covers quite reasonably well, doesn't it? And I don't know. Let's see, dark bronzy colour. No, that's too dark, isn't it? No good at all. Let's go for something lighter for the roof. And we can blend them together, evidently. And then maybe, I don't know, slightly darker for the manger. No, I'm not keen on the dark colours so far. They aren't showing up very well. Okay, and we need Joseph in the background. And Mary here, perhaps. Just a hint. Okay, and perhaps we'll just pick up a little bit of spatter and put in the sky for the rest of the stars. And you know, if you wanted to, you could put camels or something walking down from the mountains over here if you gave yourself a bit more space. It's interesting, this paint, which is the whole purpose of this really, not to show off or anything, but just to see how it shows up on the paper, how it blends, how it works, and so on. And I'm wondering whether if I took the gold pen, how that would react with it. You could probably give some texture and details, perhaps when it's dry. I'll come back to that when it's dry. So, because I think, you know, we need a band around his head and stuff like that, don't we? Anyway, so that's that. And put that over there. Is this one dry? Not quite. Hairdryer. Well, let's just put some berries, shall we? Let's try painting a stem. You could start off with just dots, you know, like this. I think that's often a good way of breaking in. And then we can, this is very intense, this paint. It blends, it's very strong, covers the paper, covers the paint, doesn't interact badly with anything, goes a long way, flows nicely, nice and smooth. Can't think of anything bad to say about it. Hello, Arthur. All the colours seem to be pleasant and interchangeable. Some of the dark ones might be a bit too dark. Oh, look what I've done. I need to repair that. It's good that I didn't mix anything. What did we use? We used Forrest Gump, didn't we? So it's this one. Should match. I think when that's dry, that'll be okay. And then if we use the gold pen, if I can find it, we can join some of the berries on if you want. Little stalks, so they don't look like they're floating in midair. We could do some leaves. using the pen, it's easier. And I think I'll leave it at that. And then you can just write, you know. Season's greetings. There we are. This one still needs a bit of work. It's not dry yet, but I'll come back to that. And yeah, so there we are. Not bad. Nice paint. So this is what we're going to do today. This is kind of a little bit similar to, I don't know if you know the Andy Warhol Christmas paintings. I hadn't heard of them until today, but I came across them online, having already decided to do robins in a tree. So I just want to clear that up, that this is, I'm not copying Andy Warhol. I just found out today that he did something similar, so I'm in good company. Now I've done a sketch and I've photocopied it. This is the original. This is the original sketch, and I did a photocopy, which is not particularly good because the copy is running out of ink, but that's okay because it's only for the shape. You turn it over and do it that way for all I care. Anyway, I just wanted to make it the same shape. I've got a piece of Fabriano hot pressed watercolour paper here, but it could be anything. I don't think it matters a bit. I couldn't decide what to use. And this piece had a little mark on the back, which has now come off. But anyway, so I chose that because it was flawed. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to place that where I want it to be. Because another thing that's quite hard is beginning, isn't it? And you sort of think, oh my God, I'm going to put it in the wrong place. It's going to end up too high. So don't take that risk. Cut it out, or if you can, make a photocopy, cut it out, and just draw dots. You don't have to draw the whole thing, just to give you an idea where you want it to be. That's where the stem is going to be. You can do it like that. Now, there's lots of different ways you could go about this, making this painting. I did it by sketching it first in ink and then colouring it in. So you could do that. You can also paint it first and then go over it in ink. So I'm still not quite sure about that, but I think what I am going to do is I'm going to put an outline in pencil, a sort of tree outline, as you do. It's not going to be too regular, just like that. And then there's the doodah, and here's the what's it. And then now we're going to fill that in. So we've got the outline of the shape, and we're going to fill that in with robins. So I think I'm going to go into the pen. This is a 0.1 Staedtler pigment liner. I probably actually should use one of these, the Micron. I wonder if it will work. The reason I'm saying that, yes, I think it will. The Staedtler ones, they're not completely waterproof, so they can run when you put paint on. So it's just suddenly occurred to me. Oh, here comes the rain. It's just suddenly occurred to me that if I do it with that, it will probably run. So let me just test it. Hopefully it'll be all right. Okay, so hopefully the rain isn't going to be annoying. It's come over all dark as well. I have to do some colour adjustment and light adjustment on the video. I'm just wondering whether I ought to put that out flat. If I do put it like that, that's easier to paint with, and then I need to cover it up so that it doesn't get mucky. Okay, can you still see that? Just move the camera a little bit. There we go. I'll talk about the paints and everything afterwards. But I just wanted to reassure you that drawing birds is so easy if you start with the legs. Just put 2 little legs like that, and 2 toes pointing forward and 1 backwards. I think they might have 3 actually, but it looks a bit like a spider if you put 3. But anyway, and then just put a circle on top, an oval like that. Then give him a beak, give him a tail, give him an eye and a wing, and lo and behold, you have a bird. And you can put their legs in any direction, but remember they do have legs, longer than you might think. So I'm going to just scatter little birds. Some of them I might just do by doing the oval first, but if you do the legs first, sometimes that's easier. I'm going to give them all little perky tails. Some of them might be facing forward, and then we just do a little V for the beak. If they're facing forward, sometimes you might want to do the legs splayed apart like that. And then after we've drawn them, we'll put them on their branches. And sometimes you can start with the beak. The main thing is not to fuss. Sometimes you might want to start with the tail. You'll find your own way. The thing to do is just to start somewhere. It's nearly the end of November. So we're just covering the tree with little birds. You can change their eyes later if you want. I'm sure you've got your own way by now of painting birds. If you want some inspiration, look back to the birds we did in the earlier part of the year. I think it was the summer. There we are then. So now we have a tree full of birds. They're all going to be robins. And the next thing, I think, probably... Are you dry? Yes, you're dry. Is to give them something to stand on. So I'm going to... In case you're wondering, well, some people recently said, oh, it would be very good if you would teach us how to draw. And I don't know, a lot of people probably would love to learn to draw, but they probably realize that it's actually quite hard to teach someone to draw. All you can do, in fact, I don't really believe in teaching at all. I believe in giving people the opportunity to learn. You can't teach somebody something. You can only show them what you do and give them the opportunity to learn. So facilitating is what I believe in, facilitating. So the idea, perhaps, and the technique, you can show them. You can't make them be able to draw or paint. It's just not possible. That's what I believe, and a lifetime of being a teacher in a school, various schools, didn't make me change my mind on that one. You learn. Usually you learn if you like the person who's teaching you. I remember when I was at school in Chislehurst in London, the subjects that I liked best were the ones that were taught by the teachers that I was slightly in love with. And that's the way it goes. If you have an emotional attachment to the person who's teaching you or trying to help you learn, then you'll learn better. I think that's true. It's getting really windy again out there now. Anyway, so going back to learning how to draw, I thought that when I started to do this one, I thought to myself, well, if we do it starting with a drawing, then people will automatically learn a little bit about drawing. So that's what I'm going to do. So now I've given each bird a twig of fir tree to stand on, and now we've got to fill in the whole of the rest of it. We could paint the birds first. Maybe we'll do that. I think that might be quite nice. Then we'll let them dry, and then we'll come in and do a bit more of the drawing part of it. And if you think of this as being just like doodling, like you do when you're on the telephone, you'll probably find that you're learning to draw without even thinking about it. So robins, they tend to have reddish breasts, don't they? So we'll mix up some red. I don't think we want it to be too garish. I don't know. We'll just put some red, and don't worry about staying inside the lines. If you come outside the lines, it doesn't matter. This is, after all, modern watercolor, as they call it these days, whatever that's supposed to mean. So anyway, we just put some little red breasts in there for them. And I'm going to then now just paint over these twigs of fir. This is why it's so important not to have a pen that runs. So rather than trying to draw all those individual little sprigs of fir, which would take us a lifetime or two, I'm just doing it like this. You, of course, can do any other way that you choose. This is just an idea. Okay, now the rest of the bird, in reality, they're very brownish, but I think that a greyish brown, a bluey grey, is probably better. So these are, if I was God and I was designing the world, that's not meant to be blasphemy, I would design robins with grey backs. And I think in America they're different anyway from the ones we have here. So this is my compromise on a robin. Robin redbreast with a grey suit on. We have a robin in our garden who arrived a little while ago, and he's settling in. Leave a bit of white on it so it looks a bit fresher. Okay, now I might put the hairdryer on that for a second, because I don't really want it to run. I think it's okay. What was I going to say? Oh yeah, the reason I'm using this hot press paper is because it's smooth, and that makes it easier to draw with a fine liner. Okay, so there are various other things I want to put on this here tree. So as you can see here, I'm not sure what I'm going to put where. We will, of course, want a star on the top, but maybe we'll put that on later. Maybe I'll put some holly next. that definitely always gives a very, oops, didn't mean to do that, a festive look, doesn't it? I was looking at the holly leaves on the tree outside a little while ago and noticing how the leaves vary in shape a lot. They're not all the sort of traditional holly leaf shape. So if you find them hard to draw, don't worry. They find it hard to grow as well. They don't always grow right. So there's those. And of course, holly always has berries. And we'll make those when we paint them. We'll make those nice and bright. Because I think those will add a touch of festivity. Okay, and I wanted to put some candy canes in. Silence while I concentrate on getting the shape roughly right. Maybe we put one up here as well. That one looks a little bit like a hockey stick, but never mind. Okay, and then from the branches we can have some balls and maybe some little parcels, packages. This is quite fun doing this. Just make it up as you go along. It's an awful lot easier than decorating the Christmas tree in real life. What else could we have? I think we need some music. These birds are singing to one another. And we'll put some more music up here. And up here as well, he really looks like he's having a good whistle. So we're going to carry on with more fur as well. We're going to try and fill up all the space. You know, it's just a matter of what with. Mustn't forget to draw in the pot on the bottom. And I think the best way of going about this is to do some of the drawing and then colour it in a bit, and then you can sort of see. I've got some holly down here that I think is probably in the wrong place. I got carried away there, but that means I have to put some more on the other side to balance that out. And then I'll have to put some more fur coming down here and a bit more fur coming down here perhaps. And yes, I'm going to colour that in now. So back to the paintbrush. I'm using a small paintbrush here. This is only a size 3. I don't usually. But anyway, so now we need some nice, I think some bright green for the holly. And I'm sure I'm going to find that once I've coloured this holly in, that the balance will have shifted a bit and I'll need to put in some more. We're getting very close to 75,000 subscribers on the channel now. I think we've got, what have we got? 74, 73, I think, which is amazing. And quite a milestone to get to 75,000. We're not far off. So we're really, once we get there, we'll be looking at 100,000, which is, I mean, we've been doing this now for 2 years. And thanks to you wonderful supporters and your faithful return to the videos every week, every day, all the time. It's amazing. So, yeah, it's a wonderful thing. We're so pleased to be able to be reaching so many people. Okay, well, I can see already that I will be wanting to put more holly in. So just use up some of that paint that's on my brush, make these a bit darker. Don't forget they will dry lighter. If you're wondering which paint I'm using, I've got a real mixture here of all sorts of bits and pieces. I've got various palettes. I've got my mixed up green one here, actually, which I'd forgotten about, which I should have here because I probably could use that. I will use it. Yeah, so, okay, so now I'm going to go to the red. We have some nice dark red for the holly berries. For me, a painting like this is good. It's good discipline, as well as it's good fun, because it is a discipline to paint with a small brush. I don't usually do that. I usually slap things on and say, oh, that'll do. And I'm a bit like that even with a small brush. But sometimes it's a good idea to change what you normally do something slightly different. And this is one of those. I've been trying to do that all Christmas, because Christmas is very traditional, isn't it? And you tend to end up painting a lot of the same things. Christmas trees, for example. But why not try to do it a bit differently? Try to think of something a bit different. Okay, now, you know what we can do? These balls, we can paint them gold. So what I'm going to do is I've got my gold paint here, my new Finetec set, but I'm going to have to activate it because you have to let the water sit on it for about 3 minutes. And it soaks up the water, actually, and goes quite soft. So we'll put that there, and I'll remember, because I'm going to do gold balls on the tree, of course. Why not? Okay, so it still needs a lot more filling in. And so I need my pen back. And we don't need to join the branches all together. They can be, there is quite a fashion at the moment for what I'm calling elemental painting, which is where people don't make a composition. They just they just plonk a bunch of elements on the paper and not connected to anything. So, you know, a page with a fireplace and a Santa Claus and a mug of hot chocolate and all these separate, and a leaf and a pine cone and a berry, all these things just sitting there totally disconnected, which is, I suppose that's modern watercolour. I don't know, is that modern watercolour? Anyway, I'm not criticising it, I'm just saying it is obviously a thing at the moment, because I'm seeing a lot of it as I do my research. And I've never painted like that at all, ever. That's because I'm not modern, I suppose. But anyway, so I'm sort of saying to myself as I'm doing this, oh, it doesn't, the elements do not need to connect. And that makes it actually, guess what, a lot easier. So I'm not really thinking about composition. And of course, no perspective either. And yeah, mustn't forget up here, this is the top of the tree there. So we will need to put a star here. I think we probably need some more holly between these two birds. Maybe a bit more music. There's another ball here, perhaps a little parcel here. Maybe we'll just have some berries to fill in some of these spaces. Okay, so next step, go back to the brush, and we'll do the rest of the green, I think. And maybe we'll make it a slightly different green. These holly leaves, because, you know, there are so many different greens. Make it up. Which one did I use? That one, wasn't it? I know I did a lot more holly than that. Can't see anymore. Oh, there's one. There's one. Okay, and then let's paint our sprigs of... And you can come in again and do a second layer if you want, if it's dried a bit pale, because it will, inevitably. So sometimes you just need to, you know, it's not that anything's gone wrong, it's just that you need to emphasize the colour a little bit. And okay, all right, now I think next thing, if I can still see, is to do some gold balls. So we'll just pick up some of this gold here and we'll make it quite nice and thick so that it's fully opaque. I think we need one over here somewhere. And then perhaps the darker gold. My goodness, it's gone dark. Perhaps we'll do the little parcels in dark gold. Are there any more? Did I only do 3? This is where you notice, you see, when you come back and you think, oh, maybe there should be another one somewhere. Anyway, so I probably will paint some of these berries in gold. We can add a few more. We can always go around them afterwards. With pen. I'm just going to paint the pot. Maybe a little bit brown. And something like that. Okay, it's now gone very, very dark and very noisy, so I'm just going to stop now and I'll come back and finish that off after lunch. Okay, so I'm back from lunch. Everything's nice and dry. And I'm looking at this and I'm thinking, well, we probably could do with a few extra things in some of these spaces. So maybe if I can fit them in, we'll put in some stars and I will colour them in gold. So just kind of finding little spaces where we can squeeze things in so that it looks really complete. A star is a good thing. And sort of even it out a bit along the bottom, maybe. I know it's not quite symmetrical, but I don't think that is going to upset anybody too much. Maybe a few more little balls, because they're nice and shiny. When you add the gold to them, they do stand out quite well. And could darken down the birds a little bit, make them a little bit more red, I suppose, if you wanted to. And we could put in a few that's right, ignore the dogs. I'm just having a little thing. You could put in some spirals, perhaps where there are gaps and you don't really know what else to put. Always like the look of a spiral. Just for the sake of filling up the space. And then we'll take my brush again and let me just wet some of this. I'm going to have to wait, I think it was 3 minutes for the paint to soften a little bit. So we'll just go into the birds and darken their little breasts a little bit. And we want some red, I think, because I think we've got some berries that haven't been coloured in. And that could be red. We could have a red ball, couldn't we? They don't all have to be gold. I know I saw some more berries somewhere because there was some holly that hadn't been coloured in. It's like one of those games that you play, you know, spot the difference. Spot the difference, yes, that's what it's like. Find that blank holly, I know it's there somewhere. Okay, so we'll pick up some gold. Just make that nice and thick. And let's see if we can paint these stars. This Finetec gold goes right over the lines, so you can do a star in that quick way with the lines showing, but it doesn't matter because when you paint over them, they disappear, the lines. More or less, you have to make sure that it's nice and the consistency is thick, and then it's pretty much opaque. And there's a couple of balls to be filled in. Oh, there's that holly leaf I was looking for. I couldn't see that before. There's another star. There's another star. I'm going to do a gold holly leaf. And there's another star. I'm getting close to the end now. I think we might have to do a little bit more green. I thought I put another ball somewhere, but I can't find it. I thought it was down here, but I think I must have done it red. So I'm going to change that to gold. And that one too. Right. And a bit more green on some of these branches. That haven't been coloured in yet. That holly leaf. There's more than one way of painting this design. You could paint each individual sprig first and then come in with the pen afterwards to give it more shape if you wanted to. You could just paint the whole thing. Don't have to use a pen at all. If you haven't got one, for example, that would be a solution. Just don't use one. Yep, I think we've got some red dots down here to fill in. And there's a couple more there. And there's, I'm sure I saw another one somewhere. Oh well. Let's put one there. And I think that's about it. Seems like the winter's well and truly arrived, as today I think we had our first frost and everything is chilly. So just to make things worse, I think I'll paint some snow today. And so that's what I'm going to do, a snowy scene. And I'm going to hope it's going to turn out okay. I'm going to show you a couple of ways of creating a nice background for a pretty picture. So we're going to put some trees, and I thought I would talk again a little bit about green. We've talked about green quite a lot over the past while, but today I'm going to paint some trees, and they're going to be green, and because they're fir trees. I wanted to show you one way of organising this. In this little palette, I'm using tubes today. You could just as easily do this with your Kuretake set or any other set, but I've sorted out, it's easier with tubes in a way. I've sorted out half a dozen greens, and I've got them here, and I've put one in each of these compartments. So we've got Hooker's green here. I've got Sap Green Extra from Old Holland. It's very good paint. It's not very expensive, but very, very good. This is Windsor Green from Winsor & Newton, of course. This is, again, another Old Holland Cheveningen green, which is this bright green here. It doesn't matter what colours you've got. This is olive green, and that's another Hooker's green, I think. It doesn't matter what you've got, just put them out so that you can see what you've got. And then in order to lighten them or darken them, you're going to use either cadmium yellow, this is what I've got here, cadmium yellow, or you could use lemon yellow or any other bright clean yellow that you've got. And in the middle here, I've got indigo, which is a very, very dark blue. And if you add this to any of these greens, it'll take them much darker. If you add this, it's going to lighten them up. So with these 4 different shades of green, which you're bound to have in your set, you're bound to have at least 3. They might not be these ones, but you'll have at least 3 in your set of paints. With those and a yellow and an indigo, you can create an infinite variety of greens, which is what you need if you're going to paint fir trees, really. If you're going to do them anything like realistic, you know, there's more than one way of painting a fir tree, and we've done lots of them, but today's, we're going to do it like this. The other colour that you might want is either Payne's Grey neutral tint or black, which is, again, another darkening down colour. And for the sky, we're going to need either some Naples yellow, or if you haven't got Naples yellow, yellow ochre would do just as well for what we're going to be doing. So let's get rid of those, all these tubes out the way. And I'm going to be painting on a piece of Bockingford today. It's cold in here. I've had the air conditioning on, but it wasn't really doing much. I'm going to move away my little animals. And so it hasn't warmed up yet. So my nose is cold, my hands are cold, everything's cold. Sheet of piece of Bockingford, about 11 by 7 inches, 19 by 28 centimeters. I like to use sheets because they're half the price of pads or blocks or books. But, you know, that's up to you. If you buy the sheets, you can tear them up into pieces like this, and it's actually really, well, it definitely saves money, especially if you do a lot of painting. Right, so what we're going to do is, first of all, we're going to paint the sky on this landscape here. And I'm not going to stick it down because I'm going to actually move the paper around as we're painting. I need to look for all the other things that I need. I probably need a biggish kind of brush for this. So we're going to go for, this is a size 11, round nylon brush, nothing very special. Any brush will do, as I say so very often. So let's paint the horizon, shall we? Let's. It's probably too wide, this piece of paper, for what we want. But anyway, starting about 2/3 of the way up, we're just going to paint a nice slope like that. So we're kind of imagining banks of snow here. So that's your horizon line. And then I'm going to just grab some water. I'm going to stop saying that. I don't like this word grab. As of today, you will not hear me say that word again. So I'm going to put some water on here, just spread it out nicely in the region of the sky. We're not not going quite to the edges. You can if you want. Probably when I add the paint, we'll go to the edges. Now I'm going to turn the paper around because I'm going to paint from the horizon down, just because it's a bit easier. And the first thing I'm going to do is go to my yellow ochre. This is yellow ochre. And we'll put some yellow ochre just along the line of the horizon, where you sometimes get that sort of light glow, which is going to sit behind the trees. And then we're going to put the blue underneath that and let the two blend gently together, but not too blendy because we don't want it. I forgot to mention the blue. I'm using indigo. Well, I didn't forget to mention it, but I didn't say. I'm using indigo for the colour of the sky, as well as for tending to darken down some of the greens later, but that will keep it more harmonious. So now that's going to, what's the word? Mix and mingle. A little bit more top of the sky, so that our snow will show up a little bit when we put the snow on later. When you're painting a sky and you're going across the page, don't go, what is it? Who was it who said it the other day? I think Ron Ranson said, you're not putting wallpaper paste on. You're painting. So, take the opportunity to save your muscle strength and just gently. And now we have to let that dry, and then we can do the next stage. So you could either whack a hairdryer on it or your heat tool, which I don't have, or you can let it dry naturally. I think I'm going to let it dry naturally, and I'm going to make myself something warm to drink. So I'll be back in a second. You'll not even realise I've gone. Okay, so I'm back. And so the next thing we're going to do is we're going to paint a line of far distant fir trees in the background there. And the first colour that I'm going to be using, I'm going to mix a light, very light green. It doesn't really matter what kind of green it is, whatever you feel like doing. I've got ultramarine blue, a little bit of cadmium yellow, I think this, I don't know what's in there. So just something quite pale, very pale really. So water it down quite a bit. And you're going to vary it anyway. So we'll just start anywhere, and we'll just start painting in a row of pine trees. And I've got a little piece of paper here to test the colours on. I don't want them too dark or too light really, but just, you know, vary. This is going to go in the background. You're going to paint over all of this. And as you paint landscapes with fir trees, you'll gradually develop your own style of, and I'm still developing mine actually. I can't quite settle on a specific way of painting pine trees. I think they're really quite hard, but practice makes perfect. And what we want here is perfectly imperfect, to coin a phrase, or to not coin it actually, someone else coined that. Oops, stop rattling. Oh gosh, I should have done a warm-up this morning before I started. I should have gone out and done, you know, what do you call it, sort of, what do you call it, when you jogging or something. I can't do that, never could, but I can't do it even more now. But sometimes you want to get the blood flowing and it doesn't want to. Anyway, I do find painting is quite an adequate warm-up for me. I didn't feel like painting yesterday. I didn't feel on top form again, but that's okay. Today I'm better. We all have ups and downs, don't we? My husband will be back soon. He's been away for 6 weeks on business in Egypt, and it's been quite hard actually, with all the animals to look after and everything all by ourselves, me and Tamsin, as well as the studio. So moan, groan. Okay, so there's the first row of trees. They're quite fun to do. You can get quite carried away with that. And then I'm just going to also put a little bit of, I'm going to use ultramarine for this, for the snow, the colour of the shadows on the snow. So just bring in some very, very pale blue and just drop it in and soften the bottom edge a little bit. So you get a crisp edge and a soft edge, because that's, I learnt in Canada that snow can be tricky to paint, but it's best if you have a soft edge underneath, and then you get a little bit more of a realistic kind of thing going. And we'll just put a little bit down here too. You can always make it darker later if you want to, and to be honest, you can always lift it out if you don't like what you've done. So there we are, that's the first layer. And at this point also, I'm going to put in some twiggy branches. Excuse me while I have a quick slurp. Some twiggy branches, yes. So I'm going to find a longer, thinner brush, something like this one. This is could be called a rigger. It's quite a long fir. Quite a long, it's not really, it looks longer than it is actually, but anyway, it's thin, it's quite thin, and it's also losing a hair there. I'm going to have to cut that off. Just a sec. Shouldn't do this. Don't recommend that you do this. Of course, what you should do is just buy a new one. But this is losing its hair, so never mind. And I'm going to paint in, just sort of in the background again, some twiggy branches of trees that have lost their leaves. So if we're going to do those, I want to do them in a sort of olive green. So I've got my olive green here, and I'm just going to put a little bit of red in that to make it a little bit more brown than green. But we'll keep it on the green side, like that. And then, let me see, how should we do this? I'm just going to start in, oh, that's a bit dark, a bit more water. I should have tried it out here first. try that again. There we are. I really don't want them to be too dark at all, but just to be there. Because, you know, as often in the distance. You might see these kind of silhouetted. Just gives a bit more interest. And then over on the left-hand side here, we could go a little bit darker, and we could bring in a branch from the side. So that'll give you the idea that somebody is standing in the picture and they can see the branch of a tree over here. Make it a little bit darker here. Okay, I'm not going to fiddle with that too much. That will do. And now we're going to just going to check that with the hair dryer. Okay, now I'm going to go back to our ordinary brush and we're going to mix up the next level of green. So just sort of random, whatever, until you come up with a tree colour that you like for the ones sort of in the background. And then we're going to put some even darker ones on top. So let's go. And drop in a little bit of extra blue if you want. And once you've got the triangle in, you can also sort of fringe out the edges a bit if you want. Sometimes it looks most realistic if you just do something silly, which is to go from side to side, like that. You wouldn't think so, but I'm going to go over this side and put in a fairly big one here. Sort of think calligraphy like, you know, Japanese, Chinese, loose brush strokes. If you want to paint them really accurately, that's totally up to you. Forget the dip there in the landscape. And sometimes they're a bit thinner. Sometimes they're a bit wider. Sometimes they all sort of meld in together. Let the paint run out a bit if you want, and then it goes lighter. Okay, so that's level 2. And we'll let that dry. And then we're going to come in with level 3. So we're going to major on the indigo for the third level. So we'll pick up some indigo here. And we will need some green. And I think also some yellow. And possibly a bit of red. Yeah, so it's nice and dark. And then we'll put big, dark fir tree in over the top of the other ones underneath. I suppose the darker ones are closer. Mix up a bit more. Don't forget the red and the yellow. And maybe we'll have a biggish one over here. And as it dries, it'll lighten up, so you might want to drop a bit more in. And then we'll let it dry. We will be going to put some snow on top. Let's put another dark one here. We'll have to wait for it to dry before we can put the snow in. Maybe a bit more dark down the bottom. Okie doke, so now I'm going to let that dry. And meanwhile, you can see that the snow lines are a little bit pale. So we'll just come back in again with a little bit more blue. Still using the same blue. You could use any blue for this, whatever you fancy. Phthalo blue, Windsor blue, cerulean, cobalt. I'm using ultramarine. And again, you can see that the tree with the, these branches is a bit too light. The traditional watercolors tend to fade back more than the Japanese ones. The Kuretake ones don't go so light. So you're just likely to have to do correction tone with them than you are with these. Sorry for sounding a bit vague, but sometimes when you're thinking about painting, it's hard to think of the right words, but you just put in a little bit more there, and I know that that will dry back a little bit further too. So we'll let that dry. And meanwhile, I'm thinking about putting some animals in the foreground here. And I have a couple of ideas, which I've done on separate pieces of paper. We have a skiing hedgehog and a skiing rabbit who are racing across the foreground of this painting. Now, I got this idea from another painter who suggested, she's a collage artist actually, and she suggested that sometimes when you're doing a painting, if you're a bit worried about where you're going to place your foreground feature or whether or not you're going to be able to do it well, there's something to be said for doing it on a separate piece of paper, and she suggested using a thinner piece. I didn't have a thinner piece handy, so I've done it on the same, and then collaging it on. And that's especially useful if you're doing, if you're going to digitize your work or if you're going to use it for a Christmas card or something, because you could take photos or scans of the same background with different things in the foreground even, and then print them, and nobody would even notice that they hadn't been painted directly onto the background. So I thought that was quite a nifty trick that she was suggesting there. So that's what I did. And you'll be able to download the sketch of these on the website if you want to, but I'll show you how I drew them, and then I'll make an effort to paint them again. And we've got like basically 3 ovals here with a little nose there and a little eye here, 3 big ears. I think it's quite nice to emphasize the size of his ears. And he's got his sweater, and then his body is all kind of forward, and his little paws here with his, what do you call it? What do you call those sticks that you use when you, ski pole, that's it. Yes. There's his little arm, and bottom of his jumper, his tail, and then rabbits have biggish feet, so we put big foot there, another big foot there, and then his ski is going to be here and here. Take that back to the back. Definitely, if you I'm not confident about this either. I haven't drawn that many skiing rabbits, so I did have to practice for quite a while before I got round to being brave enough to try this. So his ski pole comes down here, and then he's got another one coming out the back like that. Can't see his other hand. His little nose and his mouth. I think I'll just rub some of that out. I'm using Bockingford paper, and I like that paper. I think it's very good for beginners to practice on and for me to practice on. And then, so we'll put the little hedgehog here as well. He's got a little upturned nose like that, a little mouth, and then his hair, which is not hair, comes out like that. And then you're going to want to put a little scarf on him, like this. And it's going out in the wind behind. So there we are. And then we just take his spines down the back there, his little tummy in the front. And he's got nice little feet too. Another one over here. Give him a little eye. And his paw comes out here, and he's holding his ski pole as well, and his skis. Now, you could really get carried away with this. I was practicing, and yesterday I did different kinds of animals. I've got a fox and a bear and a penguin. That's the hedgehog again, and this is meant to be a raccoon. And you can tell I haven't seen very many raccoons, so they're not something I'm sort of confident about. Although I remember once when we were, I should make that longer, when we were in Vancouver, we were having a meal in a restaurant beside the waterfront, and the place was absolutely alive with raccoons. Amazing. So there we are. That's the hedgehog. So now we need to paint them, those two. I'm going to get a smaller brush, and I'm going to start with red, a reddish colour for the scarf. Yeah. Oh, excuse my voice. I'm not quite sure why it's gone all croaky. It's a nice dark red for the scarf, and make it a little bit brighter, perhaps, for the sweater on El Bunny-O. We'll draw the ribbing in with pen afterwards, and then we want to go to the brown. We'll take a little bit of quinacridone and a bit of that brown. Try not to make it too green. Rabbits are a bit on the blue, a bit on the grey side, aren't they? So let me see. Hang on a second. This is raw umber. There we are. Raw umber. Just paint him in as if it was a colouring book. Don't worry too much about the details. And then the hedgehog is going to be a little bit greyer, so we just add a little bit of Diane, a little bit of grey, which you get from your from mixing brown with ultramarine. You're going to get a slightly greyed down blue brown. Okay, and tummy, pinkish, pink inside of the ears, pinkish nose. Brown feet. And then we're going to put in the skis. There we are. You can take a lot longer over painting them than I am. And then we're probably going to need to come in with a pen. So we'll find a quite fine liner. .3 maybe. There we go. And so we just draw in these poles. Probably best to do them with a pen. And we just go here with his tail. We'll just do some squigglies for the tail. And we'll put in his claws on his paws and his fingers. And here we want the same sort of thing, just the features and the pole coming down like that. He's got the other one coming out the back here. His feet. And you can go over, I want to put some white on his jumper. There we are. And I think that's about it from that point of view. A few spiny bits and pieces on a little hedgehog. There we are. So now we've got lots of hedgehogs and rabbits coming down the slope. So then the next thing, we're getting very close, and the last thing is to put some snow on. And so we're going to find some white, which I've got here. And this is this one, Dr. P.H. Martin's Bleed Proof White, trusty old bleed proof white. And we will mix it up with some water. And then we'll just spatter some snow fairly liberally. And that's where these dark trees come into their own, because the snow really shows up beautifully against that lovely dark green. And you can also take a brush, toothbrush, pick up some of the white on the toothbrush and spray a finer, much finer spatter into the sky. My sky is quite light, so that doesn't really show very much in the sky, but it's enough. And if you want to add a sort of little whimsical touch, there's no reason why you shouldn't pop in a few extra ones with your pen. But I think that looks quite okay the way it is. So we'll remove these two friends and put them over there. And yeah, I think something I probably would do, perhaps I will anyway. And this is another thing you could try out if you're not sure. Take yourself a practice tree that you've been working on while you were practicing how to do fir trees. And rather than risking spoiling everything, you can try it out by putting your sort of collage piece, and then if you like it, then you might want to go ahead and paint it on the paper. So you could put it like that there, and you say to yourself, yes. Or you could say, no. Or maybe a bit smaller. So put it on the photocopier and make it a bit smaller. And think to yourself, oh, I don't want to put it there because the rabbit will be going straight into it. Maybe it should be there. So maybe I'll do that. And that will give you a little bit more perspective in the painting. We might do that. I'm going to have a play today, and I'm going to splash some paint around and see if I can make some bookmarks. I've got some green and some blue here. This is indigo, and I've just used that for another painting that I've just finished, which you may have seen and you may not have seen. But anyway, if you haven't, you might enjoy it. A little ski scene with some animals skiing. Anyway, so I thought rather than waste the blue, the indigo, not that I would really, but anyway, since it's there, I'm going to paint an indigo blue sky as dark as I possibly can, and I'm probably going to mix in some of this graphite colour here and see if I can make it really nice and dark. And then I'm going to just, I've wet this piece of Bockingford. I've wet this Bockingford paper, and I'm going to just put the dark blue along with the graphite into it and see what happens. And I'm thinking, I just watched a film. It was called Don't Look Up. And yeah. So I'm sort of thinking about the heavens at the moment. That's to say the starry skies. And yes, has anyone else seen that? I thought that was a very satirical film. So we'll see how this works out. The idea here is I'm going to put very dark blue on these. Then I'm going to drop in some white in a minute and see what happens with that, or maybe some silver from the Starry Colours. That's a good point. I got some other silver and golds the other day, the Coliro Finetec colours. I have to try those sometime. I haven't used them yet. Waste not, want not, you know. I like to use up what I've got. Oh, I'm a bit futile because I'll never get through all the paint I've got. Anyway, that film is very good, actually. I thought it was very good, very well done. And unfortunately, in the end, the whole planet is destroyed. So, you know. Yes. Happy days. Always open to suggestions. If anyone, because in the evening when we eat our dinner, I'm sorry, it's a good time to sit in the nice warm living room and eat our meal on our laps and enjoy something on Netflix or, that's very black, isn't it? But sometimes you can't find anything, and that's how we ended up watching. Because I said to Tamsin, I can't watch that. I can't stand these films about the end of the world. And she looked disappointed, so I said, okay, well, all right then. But don't blame me if you can't sleep. So we watched it. I have no idea what I'm doing here, by the way. I was going to do 4 different types, but I now decided to be lazy and just do 4 in different ways, different levels of darkness. Perhaps this one's very light, but I am going to add to that some more indigo. I really like the way it spreads when you put it on the paper. Very interesting, especially when you add this graphite stuff. It seems to make it go bonkers. Right, now that looks like a hair. Take that off. Then I don't know if this is going to work. I'm going to try it on one. I'll get some of this PH Martin's bleed proof white, and I'm going to just put some big stars in like that. I don't know if this is going to work. And then on this one I'm going to do some smaller ones and let them do whatever they want to do. And this one I might do some let's have a comet. Let's have a whole bunch of comets coming through the sky. And then this one. Let's try that. There are 4 different ways of applying white to wet paint. This, I think, probably needs a few smaller ones as well. Okay, so now having done that, we have to let it dry. And I think this is a case for probably not doing anything with the hairdryer, because you actually want this to take its time and spread in the natural way. So in other words, now it's time to let it sit, and I'll go and do something different. I'll be back shortly. Okay, so it's completely dry now. I let it dry and then I finished it off with a hairdryer, and now I'm going to just get some of this bleed-proof white again, and going to mix it with a little bit of water, and then I'm going to spatter some more stars, and I'm going to do them one by one. So let me just mask off that, and we'll put some really big, beautiful stars on here, like that. I think that looks okay. And I won't wash off that brush. I'll leave it there with paint on it because I know I'm going to need it again in a minute. And then I'm going to pick up some of this graphite colour, which is very dark paint, but you could use just ordinary black. And then we will put in some fir trees down here. So perhaps I might paint the trunk in first, and then just very lightly light strokes, I mean, very dark colour, but very light strokes. Just trying to keep the light showing through from behind, so leave gaps. Probably best if you, unlike me, you don't start before the stars are dry. But I've been wanting to do one of these for a long time. I know you can see them everywhere on Pinterest and everything. People have done this kind of thing, but I have not. So I thought it was time I did, and that I would do it with you. And then we want another one here. I'm going to try to miss those wet blobs because they make it go grey. The trick of painting Christmas trees, or pine trees, or fir trees, is trying to keep the branches light and random. This is not as easy as you would want it to be. But anyway, we'll do our best. And we'll hope that the magic of the elves happens, which is that overnight, while it's drying, something strange happens and your painting improves. I don't know if anyone else has noticed this, but it's definitely true. You come back to it the next day and you think, oh, it's not so bad after all. So there we are, there's our 3 trees. Maybe I'll make that one a bit taller. And when that's dry, you could put a bit more snow on there if you want, but you have to wait for it to dry first. And like I say, it doesn't stand out as well as perhaps it could have done. But that's the first one I've ever done like that. Now this one, maybe we'll go to this end. Let's put some gold and silver. Let's mix up some nice gold. Wants to be reasonably thick. Perhaps I'll mix some of that with it. There we are. Some gold. I think what I'll do next is get some silver, maybe mix it with a bit of white, and I'm going to paint a moon. That will fade as it dries, I'm sure. You see how that goes. Put some very fine white spatter in. And then I suddenly have the urge, and I should have done it on there, I think. And I might yet. I'm going to paint a gold and white Christmas tree. A bit of silver. Don't like that silver. I'm looking forward to trying the Colibri, or whatever it's called, silver, because I don't think much of the silver in this Kuretake set. I don't think much of it at all. I'll put another one here. I really quite like the way that gold and the white mix together, though. That's quite cool. Yeah. See what that looks like when that's dry. It's different. And then this one, we have comets. Now we're going to have to accentuate them. And we obviously need more stars. Somebody said they didn't like the sound of the swishing of the water when I cleaned the brush. She wasn't being critical or anything. She just said it was one of those things that affects her when other people do it. She doesn't find it a problem when she does it, but when other people swish water, it makes her feel like, you know, that fingernails on the blackboard thing, like that. So I don't know really what to do about that, though, because I have to clean my brush and I don't know any other way of doing it. So there's that. And then what else can we do? Definitely needs more stars. And I know what we can do for this one. We will get a white pen, if I can find it. And we'll join up some of the stars. If I can make it work. not working very well. I wonder if this pencil will work instead. Okay, I'm going to have to do it with a brush. There's no two ways about it. There we are then. Just to play. So, when you're doing a landscape, when I'm doing a landscape, when one does landscapes, it's usually best to put in a horizon line. And here comes the teacher in me. Don't put the horizon line across the center of the page. It tends not to look particularly, I don't know, it's more artistic if you have the horizon either a bit higher or a bit lower. And if you want to put a lot of foreground in, so for example, if you wanted to put these skiing creatures in the front, then you'll probably want a fairly high horizon line. If you wanted to make the most of the distance, so lots of trees in the distance, for example, or something in the distance, or a sunset, you might want the horizon line to be a bit lower. So I think what I'm going to do actually is I'm going to try and draw the house first. And I've noticed that American, well, maybe it's a barn. They tend to have less steeply sloping roofs than ours, and less perhaps overhang here. So, and then a bit taller perhaps. And no, that's not what I want to do. Actually, I've completely changed my mind. I'm going to turn it around. I'm going to do it this way. And because I've got a rip on there, I'm going to turn it around. I'm going to do it that way. So just for a change. And I'm going to put the house somewhere up here. And let's try and make the roof, like I said, a little bit less steep than the average English house. Do you know how hard it is to break away from what you've been doing for millions of years, and to break the chain of memory, muscle memory? I'm not sure if I'm going to make this work as an American house, but we can try. Maybe I should put horizontal lines to indicate logs, so it's like a log cabin. And shall we call this a barn? And so if it has a big door on the end there, so that'll give us the option for a bit of darkness there. And I don't know, is it a house? Is it a barn? Should it have a chimney stack? I don't know. But anyway, here comes the snow. And we'll just bring the snow line down here like that. And then we're going to put some trees along here. This is not going to be, it's not really going to be a work of art. It's going to be a little play. And then I think I don't like putting things right across the front of a drawing, because it tends to sort of break it a little bit, sort of stops the eye going in. But what we could have here is we could possibly have a fence just starting here. And because I have this idea, it could be a fence, it could be a gate, a sort of broken down fence, nothing terribly sturdy, perhaps with some snow piled up around it, if we can manage anything that complicated. And then over this side, I think I might put in some plants, some berries and some things like that. So something that's going to be quite striking in terms of the colour. So these will be dark, and then another stem here, and I think these ones might be red. These sort of roundish, you know, what are they called? Rose hips, that kind of thing. Just like that, and some more of these over here. Something like that. And then here, I think we really need some birds. So let's put a bird here. One bird there, and maybe we'll put another bird up here. This one could be a blackbird. This one could be a robin. And maybe we'll put a bird flying in over here. I might add that later. We might not do that. I see 2 birds there. Well, anyway, so that's step 1. And then what I'll do next is I'm going to paint in the sky behind the house. So first of all, we're going to wet the area behind the house. You could go over where the house is going to be because you're going to paint the house on top, but it's not difficult to paint around that. And then we need some yellow ochre. I think I'll use my Kuretake paints for this because they've got lots of nice colours here. And I'll just pick up some, I think there's a yellow ochre here, isn't there? Yes, yellow ochre is here. Just get a little palette. Yeah, so somebody said the other day, you seem to start all your paintings with yellow. And I often do, especially for the sky, because it gives a bit of a glow. Another thing I often do is turn it round so it's upside down. And then especially for a winter sky, because we're going to use phthalo blue now, Prussian blue, you can call it. Also, I think Prussian blue is quite good for winter skies. And we're going to just drop that in across the top here and let the two blend a little bit. And then maybe a little bit more at the top here. The one thing I have to try to remember when I'm painting is not to go straight from the paint to the paper. Always put it in your palette first and give it a little mix with a little bit of water just to break it up a bit. Otherwise, sometimes you could be surprised at what you end up putting on the paper. So we'll leave that to dry. And I'll put in a few shadows on the snow for the snowiness. Ultramarine for that. Different blue. A softer blue, but still blue. And so we'll just, because you know you can only paint white by painting shadows, can't you? Really, because well, you can use white gouache, but so putting in some strokes and then softening it below a little bit, and then we'll put a bit more here behind the birds, perhaps. Okay, and then down here where we said we would have some snow and there'd be shadows from these posts, wouldn't there? So we just put that there. And now we have to let that dry completely. And then we come back and do the house and the birds and the berries and so on and so forth. So I'm going to put that over here to just dry off. The next thing I wanted to do this morning is I'm going to look at these paints. This is a new set of paints that I've just received. I've been using Starry Colours, this one here, for my golds and silvers. But as you can see, I'm coming to the end. I never used this colour very much. Didn't seem to have much use. But these are getting very worn out, and especially this one, which is my favourite. So and this one's almost gone. That's the silver, but it's not silver. It's white gold, and it never really gave a very intense silver. So I thought next time round I would try the Finetec, the Coliro Finetec ones, which are easily available on Amazon. And I will put links to all of this in the description below. And also, if you want to buy any of the things that I talk about, you can go to my Amazon shop, which is at amazon.com/shop/Diane Antone Studio. And there I've got all of my recommendations all in there, all organised according to brushes, paper, paints, things you might like to have. There's a category for relaxation, there's a category for books, and category for just for fun and stuff like that. So you can have a browse around there if that's any help to you. And I'm sure this is in there already, and I'll double check. So when you get a new set of paints, of course, obviously you want to try them all out. And I haven't tried these out yet. So you're going to be here with me for the trying. And I'm just going to squirt on some water. And we'll leave that then for a minute or two while I talk about the paper I'm going to use. You always need to moisten the paints so that they begin to release themselves a little bit. When you're mixing up your paint before you use it and you're just mixing, a good tip is to not use one of your best brushes, because eventually that will wear down the nice point that you might have had at the beginning. And so use an older brush, one that's not quite so important to you. And then that way you'll save your points. Because if there's one thing that's really, I think, made a big difference for me over the years, it's having a good point to your brush. And a lot of brushes actually, even expensive ones, quite a lot of them, they don't have points. And that's because, in a way, they're not really meant for that kind of painting. So, but if you have a brush with a nice point, like these ones, that's a beautiful point, even on a bigger one. It's still got a really nice point when it's damp. You see that? And that really helps. So, right, that's quite moistened up now, so that should work reasonably well. And I'm going to do something I haven't done for ages, which is I'm going to paint on coloured paper. This is called Clairefontaine PaintOn Mixed Media paper. It comes in these different colours here. They sent me this sample pack. I don't have any affiliation with them particularly, other than through Amazon. And I haven't used this yet. This is a piece of, obviously, black. And I thought it might be quite nice to try it out with these gold paints. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to do some Christmas trees. Might need that. This I find is useful. This is called a Spontex sponge. And I usually have one of those handy. They last forever. And it works better, I find, than paper towel. Of course, I do have paper towel as well in my trusty IKEA holder. And that's useful if you make a mistake. When you, there's been a bit of a thing going around at the moment about dabbing paint off of paper with paper towel in order to create a certain effect. And yes, you can do that. But remember that that's actually generally used to correct a mistake. So it's not something that you're necessarily going to want to focus on learning. Anyway, so let's try these out, shall we? Let us begin with, this is sort of like my warm-up, I suppose. I'm going to do some not very realistic Christmas trees. How does that sound? Now, I don't know whether this is going to paint well or not, but let's see. That seems like a good start. Maybe we'll do a few in that colour, shall we? And do them in rows, I think, or something like rows. Oh, yes. Oh, this is very nice. Let's do another one down here. What shall we do? Well, first impression here is very, very good. I like that. Paints really nicely, even sort of fairly fine lines. And we'll do another one down here, shall we? That's a test, doing little circles. Okay, well, 10 out of 10 to Finetec for their beautiful iridescent colours. Okay, so let's start one here, shall we? How else can I draw a Christmas tree? Let's do the trunk first. There we are. Well, this is good. I'm enjoying this. Let's put the trunk in first. This paper is lovely as well. Right, was that this one I was using, wasn't it? There must be thousands of different ways of doing Christmas trees. I think I might do another one of these with lines going across. And let's just do a triangle. This is a good, what would you say, a imagination stimulating activity, trying to make you think of different things to do. I'm not good at imagining things, as I have said before. And so this is a good test for me to try to think of ways to paint a Christmas tree. There's another one. I'll put one of those up here, perhaps. Maybe some of them can have little pots. Let's just do one that's kind of floofy. I might do another silver one over here, perhaps. I don't know what the weather's like where you are, but here we've got a stormy week ahead of us. We're expecting quite a bit of rain and wind. So I'm trying this one at the end here. I don't know what these colours are all called. Let's try this one. Let's do some dots up here, perhaps. Well, I must say I'm very excited by these colours. I think they're going to be absolutely fantastic to use for all sorts of things. Embellishing, and I think you could probably write with it. It seems to be fairly, what's the word? Liquidy, sort of inky almost. I wanted to try this out using, being fairly delicate and finicky with it to see how easily it would be amenable to. Well, I think I've tried that out enough now. What else could we do? Maybe we'll try doing one that's a bit more, Ooh, that's very bright silver. That wasn't the one I had in my brush. I had that one. I guess they probably mix quite fine. Quite fine, what do I mean? Quite easily. There we are. And just one more, perhaps. In a second, I'm going to go back to the landscape. So we'll leave that like that. I'll probably finish that off later. And yeah, 10 out of 10 to Finetec for gold. Absolutely. Can't argue with that. So, let us see what we're doing here. It might need a bit of a dry. Just a second. Just a quick whoosh with the hairdryer. At this point, I often find I want to just stick the painting down a little bit, keep it under control. So that should work. And then we're going to do some very pale green in the background for behind the trees. So we'll just, I happen to have that phthalo blue. So I've just mixed that with the yellow ochre. And we'll just come over along here and just put in some distant trees. Doesn't need to be anything particular there. Then I like the idea of having a branch coming in from the side. So I'm going to find some brown, and then I'm going to grey it down quite a long way. And we'll just paint in here. This is a mixture of burnt sienna and blue. It could be ultramarine or phthalo blue, or both. If you do something like this, just use the point of the brush. Don't forget to make them overlap a little bit to make them look a bit more realistic. And it just kind of frames the picture a little bit more if you've got a few branches coming down from the side. And if you put them in light to start with, then you can always darken them up once you know whether or not you like the way they've arranged themselves. And we can darken them up and make them a bit more snowy later on when, Now this is a nice maroon colour, and I think that might not be a bad colour to paint this barn. So let's smack that in. The first layer. We will want to put some shadow in afterwards, but we just put that in for the first layer. And I think we'll leave the roof white because we're going to pretend that it's covered in snow. So when that's dry, I'll rub out those pencil lines there. And we let that dry for a bit. And I'll do the first layer of the what do you call it? The fence post. I'm not going to do this in brown because brown is the colour I try to minimise. So we'll put a nice blue shadow on that side, and we can also increase the shadow coming down there a little bit, soften the edges a little bit. Have snow on top, aren't we? We could say these were white fence posts. We've got white fence posts in places here at the front. We've got a white fence. So we'll just make that white, and we'll put the snow on afterwards, I think. If we decide we want to put snow on. And then we've got a cross piece here. We just put that in and pretend that that's kind of broken or missing or something there. I can always rub out the pencil marks. I need a drop of water. Now we could indicate a bit of a path if we wanted to. We could have a path coming down here, so we just perhaps indicate some snowbanks. So because there's a path, maybe someone's walking down there. It's always nice to put characters into your painting. At a later date, perhaps we would do that. Let me think, what colour shall I paint the barn door? Is that going to be a dark colour? Maybe this maroon colour, but black added to it, perhaps, to make it darker. Purple, that's not what I wanted black. Black. There we are. So, oops. That's when you need the tissue and you accidentally touch your painting. So there we are. So that's those. We'll see how that comes out when it's dry. We could start on the next layer of trees. I wonder if I need to, maybe I need to let that dry for a bit. I think I'll pop that aside for a minute or two, let that dry, and we'll come back to that in a second or two. Oops. You can cut there. So I'm thinking maybe we might do a few more bookmarks as well. So let's see. These are always fun, aren't they? Bookmarks. So we're just going to eyeball it a bit and make it about that wide. Whoops. Yeah. There we go. Yeah, about that wide. Raining again. Oh, that one's dead. We need a bit more of that, don't we? Across the top. Never quite sure when you start a bookmark whether you're going to trim it right to the inside like that, or whether you're going to leave a white border. I like this washi tape most of the time. When I started this channel, not that very long ago, 2 years ago, I had never heard of it. Never heard of washi tape. How about that? But it's better than masking tape, and it's quite inexpensive as well. So on these ones, I think I'm going to start off by putting a layer of water, first of all, and then we're going to do a snow scene on each of them. So we'll do 4 different skies, I think. See how it goes. I mean, this is all on the, what's the word? Making it up as I'm going along. Nothing planned. I have nothing planned. I don't know what I'm going to do after this. I might do something in my 365 Days of Art book next, perhaps. And so then for the sky, like I said, I think I quite like Prussian blue. So we'll pop in some Prussian blue, but we also want to make it a bit darker. So this is, we've got indigo and blue grey deep. So Prussian on this set, we've got Prussian blue, indigo and dark blue deep. I think that's right. Blue grey deep, sorry. Blue grey deep, indigo, Prussian blue. I think those three colours are pretty good for sky, so we'll try and remember to use those ones. Those three there. It's cool the way it all spreads like that. Can always have a bit more water. Leave a few gaps if you want, but I'm going to put some trees down the bottom here, so I don't want to paint all the way down really dark, so we'll just drag that down there a little bit like that. If you want to increase the variation that you've got, you can always drop in a few blobs of just plain water, and that will give you some texture there if you want to do that. This one maybe we'll stop a little bit further up even, maybe. We'll see how that moves. It'll do its own thing. Okay, there's that one. And then I'm going to start with the darkest blue, I think, here. This one's going to, oh my goodness, look at that. And perhaps we'll put a bit of purple in. It's always best, if you can, to let this kind of thing dry naturally. If you can, obviously, you can dry it with a hairdryer, but oops, that one seems to have dried. Okay, well, we'll use a different technique. Or did I forget to wet it in the first place? I didn't think I did. Okay, well. There we go, and we'll put some more dark blue up here. And maybe a bit of purple. Now we have to put that aside and let that blend. So I can't take that one off of the board. So we'll have to move the board out of the way. I'm going to have to go and find another board. It's a nice fresh board. What I do with these is they're just hardboard, plywood, pieces of plywood from the hardware store cut into size, and then I just every now and again go over it again, like I do the table as well, with a coat of chalk paint, which does the trick, keeps it reasonably clean and fresh. Okay, so maybe we'll go back to this one. Is that dry? Yes, I think it probably is. So now we want, for the background trees, let us put a layer of, where are my greens? Yeah. These are the greens I had the other day, and I was using cadmium yellow. No, that's yellow. Cadmium yellow. Oh, that'll do. That's yellow. Who cares? A little bit of yellow. I think, yeah, that's cadmium. Hello, cadmium. And then, so a little bit of green. Let's try and find a test here, because when you're mixing colours, yeah, that's a bit too dark. Yeah, let's do that. So we're just going in with another layer for the trees, which we will then leave to dry. You can get lots of textural variations if you do it like this, and it gives quite a finished effect. I don't know whether you have bars on your ham. I think you probably do. I'm looking for a white. I'm going to put shutters and there we are. I'll come in with the white for the roof in a minute. I don't know if that looks right or not, but that'll have to do. Some kind of balm. Next. What's next? Said plop. Let's come back down here and the robin, we said we would have a robin, didn't we? So let's put in a nice little red breast on the robin, like that. And then he's going to be a little bit realistic. Blue-grey for perhaps a bit more brownish. Yum, 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 yum. Yeah, something like that. First layer, and we'll give him a second layer in a minute when that one's dry, and an eye and all the rest of it. And then maybe we see quite a lot of, I don't know if you get blackbirds where you are. You know, blackbirds, that is to say, not just black birds, but blackbirds. They have a very bright yellow beak. But other than that, the male is completely black. With a very bright eye as well. Just trying to keep that like that. Okay, So there we are. There is that. Shall we do the berries? So mix up some nice bright red. Maybe a little bit on the orangey side, not pinkish, something like that. Perhaps that's the rose hips, usually red. A bit more red on the robin. If you want to lift out a little bit, don't use a piece of tissue. Use a brush to lift out the highlights. Just a little bit like that. You can always try your brush on your tissue. And maybe we'll have some blackish green, purpley, purple. Oh, more purple than that. Can use that dark colour for the ends of the rose hips like that. And then we can either use a brush or could use a fine liner sometimes when you put the twigs in, you'll say to yourself, oh, I need another one there, and maybe I need another one there. Okay, and then I think I'm going to use a slightly smaller brush for and I think we need some sort of brownish leaves. So let's find a orange. Let's find a orange colour, something like that. We'll mix it with some green and put in some idea is here, just to indicate some dead leaves. And I might come in with the, what do you call it, the fine liner to do some lines, to, you know, just sharpen it up a little bit. Because I'm going to do that on the bird anyway. This is a 0.3, you know, it's 0.5, so let's go for a 0.3. And this one here, I'll try to get the beak yellow. And keep the birds kind of whimsical. And okay, so if you want to sharpen up the shapes of your berries, I recommend a fine liner and not too much finicityness. It's the overall impression that counts. And okay, so now we need to come back to the trees in the background. And now I think we're going to need some indigo. I think this is indigo. Yeah. Drop that in and let it run. I just let that blend, and then we are going to put some snow over the whole thing. And I'm going to come back to my branches because now is the time to make them a little bit more noticeable. Don't want to go over them all, just, some of them. You can, if you want, use a sharp stick to put in some branch or stems into the paint. If it's very wet when you scrape in, you'll get a darker line. If it's starting to dry, you'll get a lighter line. I'm not absolutely a fantastically great fan of this technique, but it can be quite effective. You never quite know, really. You never really know how it's going to turn out, so leave it at that. Okay. Yeah, I'm going to let that dry so that so this will have lightened up a bit, and then we'll put the snow on top. Okie dokie, so and before I go back to the bookmarks, I'm just going to, I hope, about these lines. Sometimes the lines, the pencil lines don't come out if you've painted over them, but they show through. So you have a choice of either you like it or you don't really. Sometimes you just have to put up with it. All right, that's nearly dry, and if you want to make the paper flatten a bit, you can do it on the other side. Turn it over and I did want to do the beak of the blackbird in yellow, so I just wanted to do it. Let's do him really, because they do. It's cadmium yellow from Kuretake. I think they have yellow in their eye as well. So anyway, so that's his beak. Maybe put a few bits of yellow on here to liven that up a little bit, because I've got the paint on my brush. I'm kind of thinking I want a red one too up here. a bit more of that red on there. Okay, and then make him a bit blacker. And then this birdie bird is obviously significantly browner. A robin. Hello, robin. We've got a few robins here, haven't we? Okay, so I'm going to put some snow. I'm not going to use my best brush, so I'll use one of these older, slightly older ones. This is P.H. Martin's Bleed Proof White. I'm not sure what it is actually, whether it's a gouache or an ink, I don't know. But I'm going to put some of this on the roof. Let's cover those lines a bit. And some on the trees. And I'm going to spatter afterwards. This will dry a little bit lighter. Don't know whether I think it's snowing in Canada at the moment. I think I heard on somewhere that they had snow in Calgary. I think so. When we lived there, I remember there were years when it didn't snow until after Christmas, and we used to think, maybe it won't snow this year. Maybe we won't have snow this year. And no, but it always did eventually. But it wasn't entirely unusual for it not to snow till after Christmas. The year we arrived in Canada, which I think was 92, was the coldest winter that they'd had for a long time. And we were, what's the word? Amazed to find that it was actually colder in Calgary that winter than it was at the North Pole. That seemed rather extreme. We were not that, comfortable with that, being as we'd come from southeast England, where snow is measured in millimetres. Not feet. Things like the car freezing as we were driving along. We had a propane car and no one bothered to tell us, the person who sold it to us didn't anyway, that propane cars would freeze in minus 70. We found that out the hard way. I froze to the ground. Our shopping froze in the back of the car. Frozen bananas, not useful. My daughter's hair froze solid when she came out of the swimming pool, the swimming bath, when it was slightly damp. Oh my God, run back inside and dry your hair properly. Oh my God. Flesh freezes in 30 seconds. Make sure you're wearing a toque. if you don't want to lose your ears. My husband came in from work looking like Dr. Zhivago after a month in the Russian steppes. Okay, we'll put that aside to dry. Come back to these. Memories of the Snow. And on here, I think, what shall we do? Shall we put the spatter on first? I think I might do something with the gold, actually, and see what happens. Maybe I'll do a gold tree. We are playing. Maybe I shouldn't do that. That I shouldn't do. That is contamination. That's not fair. This is, of course, experimentation, guys. And if you care to take any of my not particularly original ideas and develop them to something better, I would be very happy. Let us try silver here. You can always go over it if you don't like it. And then I think I'm going to put a snowbank here. And then let us take a slightly bigger brush, this one perhaps. And I need to cover over this. And there we are. Don't know what I'm going to make of that when that's dry. May or may not work. Okay, I think I'm just going to pause for a second and I shall be back. So I'm back from lunch and we're going to carry on now with our Christmas tree design, trying out all sorts of different ways. And of course you could do these much bigger. There's nothing to stop you from making them as big as you like. I'm just practicing. I'm trying to and probably failing to stretch my imagination a little bit further. Trying. Okay, I need to put a little bit more water on here because it has dried up since we started with the initiation ceremony. Okay, I've got this one started. Let's put a small one here because we haven't left ourselves very much space. And down here, let's try another one like that. This is the sort I've never actually done this kind of squiggle before for a tree. It's always the first time though, isn't there? And I suppose we could put another one up here. Let's have a stem, not a stem. A trunk, like that maybe. Went a bit offline here, didn't I? On there like that, perhaps. I'm thinking about silver. Let's put another little baby one up here. And maybe the silver gold or whatever they call it. Platinum, is it? Maybe. I think I could probably fit another row in here too. And let's put a little pot. I'm going to do a skinny one. Any others that need correction? I don't think that'll do. I think maybe put pots on these ones just to bring them down a little bit. You could do some silver and gold stars on there too if you wanted to. I don't know if that would improve the overall effect, but we could. Let's see. Filling in some of the gaps, maybe. Oops. And then maybe we can do some spatter. Let me find my paintbrush. And how about some silver spatter? And maybe some gold. Not quite sure how that's going to dry. It might dry a lot lighter than it looks, but we'll see. So there we are. Somebody suggested, I think, no, I would suggest you could use a design like this for a placemat. You could do a design something like this and then get them printed out or print them out yourself and turn them into table mats for the place setting for Christmas Day, couldn't you? Or you could make wrapping paper like that as well. Could do all sorts of things. It looks quite festive, doesn't it? Okay, so that one can go away for a minute, and now I've got to finish off my bookmarks. Now, I just wanted to do a partial reveal here because I want to see what this looks like before we go any further. This particular one, oops. So we can cut that one off, I think. Number one. That's not completely... well, I don't know. What do you think? Those paints are really nice and shiny. They really do catch the light. So, looks like there's a bit of a hailstorm of comets there. I think I've got comets on the brain. So we'll put that one over there, and then I'll just put back my tape. So then we can carry on with the next ones. And I think I was thinking, I'll put these paints away for a minute. Find a pencil. Here we are. Let us paint a little house in the prairie. So we have some snow like that, and then we put chimney, smoke, windows and doors, or door at least. Maybe a log pile beside the house. Little window up there. Okay, and then behind we'll have some trees. Okay, and now we need to paint it. So red, reddish brown. I think that would probably do for the house colour, but we probably want to put, this is cadmium yellow. Some light in the windows, and then we could just pretend that the door is open a crack. Okay, so now we just wait for that to dry before we paint the walls to the house. And we could have our famous bunny. Sitting in the garden there, and maybe Mr. Hedgehog also. Not quite sure what they're waiting for, but while they're waiting, we'll fill them in. And now we need some green. And a slightly bigger brush, not a smaller one. Oops. There's my yellow. There we go. Let's have a nice Christmas tree green, shall we? if you make it nice and dark, the tree, then when you come to put the snow on, it'll show up better. Leave plenty of gaps. And slightly smaller brush again. I paint the house. Get a nice maroon colour, browny red. There's the door. And the roof is going to be sort of light grey, I think. Oh, no, wait a minute. I think I'm going to have the roof. The roof is going to be white because it's going to be covered with snow. That would have been a bad mistake, wouldn't it? The chimney pot, though, can be red because obviously that's going to be warm. So we'll just put a little bit of grey. Oh dear, it's raining. On the roof there. And some shadow underneath those. And then I think it's time for some pen work first of all. So let's find a very fine pen. I think I need to get a new 0.05. This is a very fine one and they don't last very long. Maybe I can manage with a 0.1. What's that? 0.2. I'll just do the logs in ink, I think. And a little bit of roof showing for character. Around the door. There we are. And now we need some snow, don't we? So let's do the snow this time with a toothbrush. So we'll just pick up some of that paint that we put in here earlier. And it's generally speaking a reasonably good idea to just try it out and also to cover up the ones you're not working on. So that could be a combination of snow and stars. And there we are. Number 2. Another good reason for cutting them off as you go along, just just in case you sort of smudge. But on the other hand, you might notice a few details that you wanted to add, so like shadow under the eaves, and maybe you might decide you do want to paint the log pile a bit, and then maybe you do want to put some white on the log pile, and maybe you do actually need to paint the roof, because you remember that it's not actually white because you'd painted the background first. So that's better. And then you think, oh, that's dry now. El Bunny-O needs a bit more colour, and so does El Hedgehog. So that we now need to leave to dry. And the next one, what shall we do next? What shall we do next? We could do... What could we do? One thing that we could do, we could bring in from the side here a branch. And we could have a bird on here, for example. Perhaps a little robin. And then we could paint him and we could paint the branch in kind of wintry silhouette using just black. Not quite sure where I'm going here, but and then we want some brown. Very strange weather out there at the moment. Hailstorm has passed. And just painting this little robin with gouache rather than ordinary watercolour, because I wanted it to go over the blue. Whereas this one down below, he was on sort of much lighter colour, so that can be just watercolour. And I think we're going to need a moon up in the sky here. Let's have a sort of crescent moon, shall we? And now we need to put in the eye and the beak and the legs and the beak, the eye and the legs and the feet. When that's dry, I'll be able to do the line around the outside there. And I think, of course, we still need some snow and stars and things like that. Let's just cover that one up. Lots of snow. And maybe a few dark blue as well. I'll just find some of this, what's it called? Blue grey deep. Oh, I need to colour that one. Yeah, so a mixture of blue and grey and white. Not sure about that. Maybe I'll make that round. Okay, so that's that one. And I think I'm going to stop there.